Hey guys, what I wanted to set up for you today is a little lab demonstration where you can collect some data using this cart and a 1.5 meter distance, and we're going to look at the speeds. Like we talked about in class, speed, when we calculate it, is equal to the distance that something travels divided by the time it takes that object to travel that distance. So in our lab today, for your distances, it's going to be 1.5 meters each time. So I set up a track here that is exactly 1.5 meters. And I will push this cart and try to do it 3 times at the same speed. And we're going to record a time 1, a time 2, and a time 3. T1, T2, T3 in your data table that you have that I gave you in It's Learning. You can certainly write this data down and then transfer it to the data table later, but you definitely need to record it. And then I'm going to try another speed, and I'm going to try to replicate it 3 times at a T1, T2, T3. And then we're going to average the first set of times versus the second set of times and calculate a speed that this cart was traveling. And then we're going to use that later to graph our distance on a graph versus our time, and then we're going to look at the slopes of the 2 different lines that we get, and we're going to compare what the slope of a line of a faster speed looks like versus the slope of a line of a slower speed. So all you need right now, something to write your data down on, something to write with, and a stopwatch. Your cell phone stopwatches work great. That's what I usually use, but if you don't have one, you may well have a stopwatch at home that you can use. Something that will measure seconds and milliseconds, because this is such a short distance, the time is not going to be long. It's going to be between 2 and 3 seconds, or between 1 and 2 seconds. So you need something that will measure that small amount of time. If you have your cell phone, that works great. Your computer has a timer on it as well that you can use. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to put the card here in front of this first yellow flag. That's our start, and our stop is this box down here with the other yellow flag on it. And we're going to start our timers when the front of the cart passes the first yellow flag and when it hits the flag down here. And that's the time that we want to record. You don't want to record the tail end of the cart. You want to make sure it's the same spot, front, when you do that to get the most accurate time. And then we'll record those, and then we'll do that 3 times, and then we'll do 3 times at a slower speed, and then we'll do some averages and see what we get. So right now, all that you need, something to write with, something to write on, and your timer. And I'll help you out with a little start stop. You might be better seeing where it starts and where it stops than listening to me, whichever works for you. And I'll try real hard to make it 3 trials, similar speed. That's the very hardest part of this. Okay, you guys ready? Do you have your timers reset to 0? Start. Stop. And you're going to record that time as your T1 or your time 1 in your data table. Now I'm going to try and replicate that as best I can. Reset your timers. Start. Stop. That will be your T2. Write that down. Reset your timer. And now for the T3. Start. Stop. So now you have 3 different times in seconds, T1, T2, T3, and you're going to take those 3 times and you're going to average them so that you get an average time that this cart traveled. And then we're going to do the calculation. The speed of the cart is equivalent to the distance, 1.5 meters, divided by the average time that you got. But in the meantime, before you do that, let's do our second speed run and see what happens. I'm going to try to make it a little bit slower, and we'll see how that works. T1, T2, T3, so that we get 2 good graphs, 2 good lines that we can graph. Okay, you guys have your timers reset. This will be your second row of data. This will be your T1. Start. Stop. So that's your T1 for your second row. Reset your timer. Start. Stop. That's your T2. I think that was a little bit too fast, but we'll see. Okay, now this will be your last one, your T3. Start. Stop. That was better. And you're going to average those 3 times, and we're going to get a time for that second speed that I attempted to replicate. So what you're going to do now, make sure you have your data, T1, T2, T3 for the first 3 runs, T1, T2, T3 for the second 3, and then you can go ahead and average each one and record that on your data table. And then in your last column on the data table, you're going to calculate the speed, and you're going to do that by, like we talked about in class, dividing the distance, 1.5 meters, that was 1.5 meters each time, divided by your average time. And that'll be the speed of the cart for each one. And then we'll work with that in class, and we will graph that.